I successfully restarted my life 4 years ago on this day, and I want to share with you the most important lesson from my journey. Now, this one is deeply personal, so forgive me if my delivery is not the most precise or if I get a bit emotional. Here's the story. After quitting my job, I left my home country exactly 4 years ago on this day, knowing that I will not be returning. So, with almost no plan, I left to the other side of the world, not in search of temporary adventure, but in search of a new home, and with the intent to rebuild my life. I landed in a country that just a month before that I wouldn't even be able to show on the world's map. And that's where I started rebuilding my life. Now, since then, in these 4 years, I've lived in 6 different countries and visited a couple of more, and I've had many adventurous and interesting experiences. But that's not the point of my story, at least not right now, the adventure part. To prove to you, the viewer or the listener, that it was actually a successful rebuilding and restarting of my life, I want to share two of the most important accomplishments, at least external accomplishments, in these 4 years. First, my writing reached millions of people, and that still feels surreal to say, and I'm immensely grateful for it. Right now, I cannot believe that I'm saying it. Also, my writing and my speaking overall accumulated over 200,000 members of audience. I don't want to say the word followers, so readers and viewers. Over 200,000 people who said, yes, I want to read or watch and listen more of this guy. Insane, once again. And I'm immensely grateful for it every single day, every single morning. The other accomplishment, it's connected, it's all the same, but other side of this accomplishment is the quote-unquote professional side. I managed to do what most people can do, or for different reasons are not able to accomplish, and that is I turned my passion into my profession, while still nurturing the passion side of it, definitely. I'm privileged that, and blessed beyond measure, that my writing and my speaking and my creation of different educational resources is what I do for a living. Again, also something that feels surreal to say. Even though it's been a while by this point, still, every single day I wake up grateful for these achievements that I now share with you. And once again, I'm sharing them as most important external achievements in these 4 years, because for the viewer or listener to really believe that my life reset was successful, I have to share something that I have achieved. So these are some of the most visible, tangible things, but also some that I hold closest to my heart, at least when it comes to external achievements and numbers. Now, as I said, I want to share the most important lesson from my journey. I have to tell you in advance, the most important lesson isn't going to be how to turn your passion into a profession, at least on a practical level. It's not going to be how to make money off of writing or video making, and it's not going to be how to navigate the daily routine. I'm willing to answer and to talk about all of these things, and all of this is in some ways and to some extent communicated through my videos, but I'm willing to answer any questions. However, the most important lesson isn't a practical productivity or business lesson. It's a lesson on major life decisions and directing your life, navigating your life, being at the steering wheel, holding the steering wheel of your life. The most important lesson is that while making life choices, big ones, but also smaller life choices, you have to take into consideration the internal effects and results of those choices, not just external. What do I mean by this? All of us live in a society that optimizes for external results, that optimizes for what is the outcome down the line. People who don't know much about success optimize for short-term gain. People who know something or a lot about success optimize for long-term gain. But whether it's short-term gain or long-term gain, it's always external. And this also relates to type of success that isn't necessarily primarily about money. So when I say short-term gain and long-term gain, and people always focusing on that gain being external, I'm not saying that everyone is superficial. I'm not saying that everyone's goals are to drive exotic cars or buy a yacht or to make X amount of money. There are people out there, profound people, great humans that are optimizing for, way more modest life, but still all of their life decisions revolve around, and all of their thinking about their life decisions revolves around external outcomes. Very rarely do we stop to ask what are the psychological, emotional, and yes, what are the spiritual effects and outcomes and potential results of these decisions. And I can tell you today that I have made some terrible business decisions, some terrible decisions when it came to choosing the direction of my quote-unquote career, even though it never seemed like a career, my business through the different points of development, places where I would live, the type of lifestyle that I would live, the type of routine that I would live on a practical level and on the level of creating an externally successful life. I made plenty of mistakes. But because I learned my lesson in the past, getting burnt seriously by making decisions that cost me a lot of psychological, emotional, and spiritual pain, because I learned that lesson in the past, I embarked on this journey knowing that every decision that I make is going to prioritize my soul. Now, me saying that I'm prioritizing my soul might either sound selfish, or for some people might sound like I'm trying to impose religion on you. Definitely not. Definitely, at least the religion. I cannot convince you that I'm not selfish. Let's start with religion. I'm not trying to impose religion on you. When I say prioritizing my soul, that's a wider concept that fully gives you freedom to interpret and interact with the soul in your own way. But I do believe that we have a soul. When it comes to whether it's selfish to prioritize your soul, or maybe you can think of your psyche as well. Again, I'm locating the psyche here when I'm talking about it, but I don't really think the psyche is here. Psyche can be here or here, sometimes here, depending on circumstances and situation. Am I selfish for prioritizing the psyche or the soul, prioritizing my psychological, emotional, spiritual well-being? At moments, yes, definitely. Long term, I think I, all of this time, have been creating a better human being for my loved ones. Now, to give some concrete examples, well, when I was departing, where I would go and what I would do wherever I go, that decision was made based off of what's going to have long-term the best psychological, emotional, and spiritual effects. Because I did have a couple of options, and on paper, when it came to external payoff, I chose by far the worst option. I chose to try to make at that time a 10K followers Instagram page of writing with almost zero income, to try to make it into a business, and left my home country to Sri Lanka, went to Sri Lanka. The only country where I could land with Montenegrin passport, while a lot of countries in the region were still under COVID restrictions. The only country where I could actually obtain a visa online rather than having to travel to another EU country to get a visa for some other country. So pretty much I went to a country that I was just able to get into, and country that was affordable for me at that point, because I had no sustainable stream of income, and I had limited savings. So my love and gratitude goes forever to the country of Sri Lanka and people of Sri Lanka that hosted me for the first 3.5, 4 months of my journey, not knowing what the hell I'm doing, not knowing what I'm going to do with my life, and giving me, let's say, the starting ground for my journey. Well, I decided to do that, which was an insane, crazy move on paper, but it wasn't just recklessness. Was it partially recklessness? Yes. It wasn't just recklessness, because I knew that a couple of other options that involved me going to some other countries that on paper would provide me a more sustainable and more clear path to financial stability, I knew that going there would require me to drop the writing project, to drop the project of Recovering Overthinker. There were a couple of different options, and they demanded me to invest all of my day into building a life in those countries where building my life would be a more clear, straightforward, sustainable path. Well, I knew, not having any foundation for rebuilding my life, I knew one thing. If I stopped writing, I would hate myself. If I stopped writing, sooner or later, I would be miserable. And I knew, once again, that the other path, or let's say couple of similar paths, required at least 2 years of immense sacrifice that would not allow for me to continue pursuing my writing with the same intensity and the same volume. And I knew that that would be a path of psychological, emotional, spiritual suffering and deterioration, as dramatic as it sounds. So I decided to go into uncharted territory with no clear path, to be quote-unquote digital nomad, which is something that I didn't want. I didn't really want to be someone who is changing location every couple of months, but I decided to go on the path that would allow me to continue writing and to write even more. Again, on paper, terrible decision. In the first couple of months, and almost for the whole first year, it seemed like, okay, this is going to end up in a massive failure. But I knew one thing. I'm still doing honor to myself. I'm doing justice to myself. I'm honoring what is inside of me. And even if I end up broke, which is, I know how this will sound to some people, but I knew that even if I end up broke, and even if this ends up being a massive failure, I will know that I was doing justice to what is in me and I was honoring what is in me. Now, I said I know how this will sound to some people. There are some people out there with greater responsibilities than the responsibilities that I have had at that point. And I know that a lot of people listening to this cannot afford to make that type of decision. You know, I will be broke, but I will pursue my dreams. I fully understand that. But you can apply this to other aspects of your life, to smaller decisions. Because this is not about you doing the same as me in terms of external factors. This is not about you quitting your job and with zero plan going to the other side of the world. It's considering, when making life decisions, are you doing justice to yourself internally? Sometimes that is choosing between two different job opportunities that are seemingly the same or pretty close in their external elements, but are very different in how one of them would reflect on your psychological, emotional, and spiritual well-being. You know, I was working in air traffic control before I quit my job and left my country, and you know, there's something interesting that I noticed in my colleagues, all of whom I respect because they're doing an immensely demanding and challenging job and stressful job. But when considering whether they want to work the night shift or not, they would focus on the external factors of working the night shift, how much work there is in the night shift, and also, some additional pay that is accumulated through the shift work. No one would consider the psychological and emotional, maybe I shouldn't put spiritual now in this conversation, but let's say psychological and emotional factors of working night shift, where the next day is pretty much a write-off because you have to get sleep, because you haven't slept the whole night. What does that mean? That means that day is a write-off, and it's not just the physiological effects of that messed up sleep schedule. It's also the emotional and psychological, that day is a write-off and you don't get to spend your free day with your family, or the majority of that free day, you don't get to spend it with your family, with your loved ones. And it was always interesting to me. Those are seemingly smaller life decisions. So it's not you're quitting your job, you're going without a plan, you're massively shifting your whole life journey. It's in the confines of what you're already doing. But always people are focusing on the external outcomes. Very rarely do they ask, okay, how is this reflecting on my emotional, psychological, spiritual well-being? That's one of the examples. I rarely saw any of my colleagues say, okay, if given the opportunity, I will not do the night shift because I want to be fresh on my free day and I want to spend it with my loved ones. That's just one example. Many different examples that all of you can think of right now. But I was sharing my journey with you because that's, the biggest example that I have where I was making decisions that didn't make much sense when it comes to the practical side of life. But I would argue that making decisions oriented around long-term psychological, emotional, and spiritual well-being gave me the strength to persist. So yes, I made a lot of business mistakes. Yes, I wasn't the smartest person when it came to the strategy of my online presence. No one is going to say David, the recovering overthinker, is the mastermind of marketing. Far from it. But here I am today, living off of my writing. And I would argue that doing justice to myself and making these decisions that are in alignment with who I want to be and in alignment with the inner part of me, not just alignment with what I want to be externally, I would argue these decisions gave me strength to continue and continue and continue trying and trying and trying and persist and persist and persist when things seemed hopeless. Also to persist in times of great mental health struggles, to persist in times of such uncertainty where I know most people would give up. And this is not to sound arrogant, it's just a fact. When you don't have money for a plane ticket back home, and when you don't know if you're going to be able to pay the next month's rent, and you'll continue writing and writing and writing and writing, and you don't give up. And then in the last couple of days, you make enough money for the next month's rent. And then you say, okay, I'm still going to write and write and write and write and write. A lot of that strength came from the fact that so many decisions were made, and all of the decisions were with the intent of or prioritizing my psychological, emotional, and spiritual well-being. So that is the most important lesson from my journey. I would love if I was right now able to give some examples that are more related to daily life or more related to life that doesn't involve completely uprooting yourself and resetting everything. But I'm going to be honest, it's an emotional day for me and it's not even easy to deliver all of this. So right now, I don't have the capacity to think of some less dramatic examples. Right now, what I have the capacity to do is to convey my story in this way and to tell you that with full understanding that the context of your life might be different, with full understanding that maybe you don't have the privilege of always prioritizing yourself and your inner well-being, with fully understanding that you might have responsibilities and obligations that ask for sacrifice, that ask for prioritizing just putting food on the table, with full acknowledgement and the deepest respect for that, I still have the duty to challenge you and to say, look for decisions in life, look for moments in life, look for directions that you're thinking about where this does apply, because I know it applies somewhere. I know it applies somewhere regardless of the amount of responsibilities and obligations you have. I know there is space in your life for giving more of yourself and more of your attention when making decisions, giving more of yourself and more of your attention to your inner long-term well-being, more of yourself and more of your attention to your psychological, spiritual, and emotional well-being. I know that as you are moving through life, because all of us are moving through life, we cannot be sitting. Hopefully, we are not waiting for life to pass us by. If we are moving through life, we are constantly making decisions. And we simply cannot base all of our decisions on external gain, external outcome, whether it's short-term or long-term. I just ask you to actively seek for opportunities to prioritize this here. To prioritize the fact that 10 years from now, 5 years from now, 15 years from now, 25 years from now, you still need to look yourself in the mirror. And if you hate yourself, I'm not sure that your loved ones are going to really care that much about all the external achievements. If you hate yourself, if you become a miserable person, resentful person, I'm not sure that the people that you impressed with your external accomplishments are going to care. But we should never care about them. We should never care about impressing those people. Let's just focus on loved ones. The greatest gift that you can give to your loved ones is you loving life. I had that realization when I was leaving my home country, because I had to leave behind my loved ones, and it's the most difficult decision that I ever had to make. To this day, I miss them. They are all living their lives and building their lives. The younger ones, the younger generation, they are growing up. My generation, they're building their lives. The older ones, they are entering, the final seasons of their lives, and I'm not there to participate. It's painful. However, I know that me being there, living there, is borderline impossible, but even if it's possible, it doesn't lead to me truly loving life. But today, I stand here 8 hours apart from all of my loved ones, except for one person. One person is now 14 hours away from me. So far away from all of them, but loving life. And when I reunite with them and when I speak to them, I know they can see that I love life with such passion. And I know that it's contagious, at least to some extent. I know they are happy to see me happy. But it's not about happiness. Happiness is fleeting. I know they are fulfilled to see me fulfilled. I know they feel warmth in their heart when they see that my heart is burning with passion and love for life. And that's a result of me making decisions that prioritize my internal, psychological, emotional, and spiritual well-being. So for those of you who think that you need to sacrifice yourself for your loved ones all the time, consider that the greatest gift that you can give to your loved ones is you loving life, loving your life and loving life itself. Because then you will be giving them the greatest gift, and that is them knowing that it's possible to love life and that they can love life. So that's it, friends. Stay strong, love life, choose internal well-being. Never feel sorry for yourself, because you can always keep moving forward. Light that raging fire in your heart. Nurture that raging fire in your heart. And go beyond. Thank you.